The alarm screamed through the cargo ship, and Tamin knew he was in serious trouble. Red lights flashed across every panel in the cockpit. The engine was dying, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His hands moved quickly over the controls, trying to find somewhere safe to land. Anywhere would do at this point. Come on, he muttered, scanning the nearby space. There was a moon ahead, small and gray. It looked dead, but it had an atmosphere. That would have to be enough. The ship shook violently as he pushed it toward the moon's surface. The hull groaned under the stress. Tamin gripped the controls tighter, guiding the vessel down through the thick clouds. The landing was rough. Metal scraped against rock, and sparks flew past the windows. When everything finally stopped moving, Tamin sat in silence for a moment, just breathing. He was alive. That was something. Tamin grabbed his tools and survival pack, then opened the hatch. The air outside was breathable, but smelled wrong, like chemicals and sulfur. The ground was covered in dark red rocks and strange yellow moss. In the distance, tall cliffs rose into the murky sky. This place felt wrong. Empty but not empty. Like something was watching. He started working on the engine right away. The damage was bad. It would take days to fix, maybe longer. Tamin set up his portable lights and got to work. Hours passed. The sun on this moon was dim and orange, barely giving any light. He worked by the glow of his lamps, replacing burned circuits and welding broken parts. That's when he felt it. A presence. Dashman didn't turn around. He kept working, but his body tensed. Something large was nearby. Something that didn't want him to know it was there. He carefully moved his hand toward the plasma cutter on his belt. Not a weapon, but it could be used as one if needed. The feeling didn't go away. For the next hour, Tamin worked while something watched him from the shadows. He pretended not to notice, but every sense was on high alert. When he finally turned to grab another tool, he saw it. The creature stood on a ridge about 50 meters away. It was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with a long body covered in dark scales. 8 limbs, each ending in curved claws. The head was narrow with too many eyes, all of them focused on him. The mouth opened slightly, showing rows of shark teeth. Tay-Min recognized it from the survival guides. A Varathi, an apex predator, the kind of alien that hunted for sport and never lost. He didn't run. Running would trigger the chase instinct. Instead, he slowly picked up a heavy wrench and turned back to his work. His heart pounded, but his hands stayed steady. If this thing wanted to kill him, it would have already attacked. It was testing him, watching to see what he would do. The Varathi moved closer. Tamin heard the soft scrape of claws on rock. He kept working, but positioned himself so he could see the creature in the reflection of the ship's metal hull. It circled him slowly, like a shark around prey. Then it charged. Tamin rolled to the side just as the creature lunged. Claws raked across the spot where he'd been standing. He swung the wrench hard, hitting one of the limbs. The Varathi hissed and backed away, surprised. Tamin didn't wait. He ran toward the cliffs, grabbing his pack as he went. The hunt had begun. For 3 days, Tamin survived in the wasteland. The Varathi tracked him constantly, never giving him more than a few hours of rest. Tamin used everything he had. He set traps using his ship's cargo cables. He climbed cliffs the creature couldn't easily scale. He used the chemical pools scattered across the landscape. Knowing the acid would burn the predator's scales, he didn't try to kill it. He couldn't. The thing was too strong, too fast. But he could make the hunt costly. Every attack left the Varathi with new wounds. Cuts from sharpened metal. Burns from acid. Bruises from falling rocks Tamin had triggered. On the 3rd day, a massive storm rolled in. The wind howled, and the rain burned like fire. Taemin found shelter in an old mining colony, abandoned and half-collapsed. He crawled inside a metal building and collapsed against the wall, exhausted. Thunder crashed outside. Then, through the rain, Taemin heard scraping. The Velrathi had followed him inside. They stared at each other across the dark room. Both were wounded. Both were exhausted. The creature's breathing was labored, and dark blood dripped from several cuts along its body. Taemin's left arm was injured, and he could barely stand. The Velrathi moved forward slowly. Taemin raised his plasma cutter, hand shaking. But the creature didn't attack. Instead, it collapsed on the other side of the room, watching him with those strange eyes. They stayed like that through the night. The storm raged outside while predator and prey rested in silence. Taemin didn't sleep. He couldn't, but he lowered his weapon after a while. The Velrathi wasn't hunting anymore. It was just surviving, same as him thought when morning came. Taemin noticed the creature was breathing strangely. One of his traps had damaged its side badly. The wound was infected. Without treatment, the predator would die slowly. Tae-Min made a decision he knew was probably stupid. He pulled out his medical kit and slowly approached. The Velrathi tensed, growling low. Taemin stopped, then placed the medical supplies on the ground between them. He pointed at the wound, then at the supplies. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the Velrathi reached out with one clawed limb and pulled the kit closer. It watched Taemin carefully as it opened the container and examined the contents. Tae-Min sat back down. He pulled out his own supplies and started treating his injuries. Across the room, the Velrathi did the same. It was strange, sitting there with a creature that had been trying to kill him for 3 days. But somehow, it felt right. The storm passed. The orange sun returned. And when Taemin stood to leave, the Velrathi didn't stop him. It just watched as the human walked back toward his ship. Tae-Min didn't know it yet, but something had changed. The hunt was over, and something new had begun. As he reached his damaged ship and started gathering more tools, he heard movement behind him. The Velrathi had followed at a distance. It sat on the same ridge as before, watching. But this time, it didn't feel like danger. It felt like curiosity. Taemin got back to work on the engine, and the Velrathi watched, learning what tools were, seeing how the humans solved problems without claws or teeth or strength. The hunt had ended, but the real story was just beginning. The Velrathi stayed near Taemin's camp for 2 more days. It didn't attack. It didn't leave. It just watched as the human worked on the broken ship. Sometimes it would make strange clicking sounds, like it was trying to communicate. Taemin had no idea what the sounds meant, but he started clicking back. It felt less lonely that way. On the 5th day, the Velrathi brought him something. A dead animal, some kind of 6-legged reptile. It dropped the creature near Taemin's camp and backed away. Taemin stared at it, then at the predator. Was this a gift? A peace offering? He nodded his thanks and dragged the animal to his cooking area. The Velrathi watched as he prepared the meat, clearly fascinated by the use of fire and tools. When the food was ready, Taemin cut off a portion and tossed it toward the creature. The Velrathi caught it midair and ate it quickly. They shared a meal. A human and an apex predator, sitting across from each other in the dim orange light of an alien sun. After eating, the Velrathi made more clicking sounds and gestured with its front limbs toward the cliffs. It wanted Taemin to follow. Every instinct told him this was dangerous, but curiosity won. He grabbed his pack and followed. The creature led him through narrow passages in the rocks, moving with surprising grace despite its size. After an hour of walking, they arrived at a canyon system. And there, hidden in a deep cave, Taemin saw them. Cubs. 3 small Velrathi, each about the size of a large dog. They hissed when they saw Taemin, their scales bristling. The adult Velrathi made a low humming sound, and the cubs quieted down but kept watching the human with suspicious eyes. The adult moved deeper into the cave and showed Taemin the problem. The hunting grounds beyond the canyon were destroyed. Massive machines had torn up the land, leaving nothing but bare dirt and toxic waste. Some corporation had strip-mined the area and left. The local animals were gone. The pack was starving. Tae-Min understood now. The Velrathi hadn't been hunting him for sport. It had been testing him, trying to determine if humans were prey, food for its starving family. He sat down on a rock and thought. The adult Velrathi sat nearby, watching and waiting. The cubs peered from the shadows, their eyes glowing in the darkness. "Okay," Taemin said out loud, mostly to himself. "We need food. Those reptile things you brought me, where did you find that?" The Velrathi couldn't understand his words, but it responded to his tone. It made clicking sounds and pointed with a limb toward a different direction, away from the destroyed mining area. Tae-Min pulled out his scanner and checked the terrain maps. There was a valley on the other side of the mountain. The readings showed animal activity there, but getting there required crossing dangerous ground. He looked at the Velrathi and pointed at his scanner, then at the valley. The creature moved closer, studying the device with interest. Taemin showed it the map, using his finger to trace a path. The Velrathi's eyes followed his movements. "We can hunt there," Taemin said. "But we do it smart, not just chasing. We use traps." The next day, Taemin taught an apex predator how to hunt like a human. He showed the Velrathi how to set up simple snares using cable from his ship, how to identify animal paths and choke points, how to use bait to lure prey into ambush spots. The creature learned quickly, its intelligence obvious now that they weren't trying to kill each other. The first trap caught nothing. The second caught a small animal, barely enough for one cub. But the third trap, set up near a water source, caught something big. A creature similar to an elk, with thick fur and curved horns. It was enough to feed the pack for days. The adult Velrathi made a sound Taemin had never heard before. Something like a purr mixed with clicking. It was pleased. The creature grabbed the kill and started dragging it back to the cave. Taemin followed, feeling oddly proud. When they returned, the cubs were excited. They tore into the meat while the adult watched over them. Taemin sat at a respectful distance, observing. One of the cubs, the smallest one, kept glancing at him between bites. It was less afraid now. That night, the adult Velrathi approached Taemin's camp. It carried something in its mouth, a small device. The translation unit Taemin had seen earlier, but thought was broken. The creature had repaired it somehow, using parts from the abandoned mine colony. Tae-Min attached the device to his collar. It crackled with static, then voices emerged. Broken and distorted, but understandable. "Name?" The Velrathi asked through the translator. "Taemin," he replied. The creature considered this. "Taemin. I am Raxthur, pack leader." They could talk now. It changed everything. Over the next week, Raxthur and Taemin communicated more clearly. Raxthur explained that his pack had lost everything when the mining company destroyed their territory. They couldn't migrate because other packs controlled the surrounding areas. They would kill Raxthur's cubs if they tried to cross into their lands. Tae-Min told Raxthur about his ship, about his life hauling cargo across space, about being alone most of the time. Raxthur listened, and Taemin realized the predator understood loneliness. One evening, as they sat watching the cubs play, Raxthur said something strange. "You walk with death, Taemin, but death answers to you. You decide when it strikes." Taemin didn't understand at first. Raxthur continued, "In our culture, there is a title, Kreshmora. It means Uncle Death in your language. One who is Death's companion, who commands when it hunts. I'm not, Taman started to say. You could have killed me in the storm, Raxter interrupted. I was weak, wounded, but you gave medicine instead. You choose when to kill, when to spare. This is Kreshmora. Raxter stood on his back four limbs, towering over Tamin. No outsider has ever received this title, but you have earned it. Kreshmora Tamin. Uncle Death, pack friend. Tamin felt the weight of those words. In Velrathi culture, according to what Raxter had explained, this was a massive honor. It meant trust. It meant family. I accept, Tamin said simply. The cubs had stopped playing and were watching. Even they seemed to understand something important had happened. The smallest one, the one that had been watching Tamin most closely, approached slowly. It sniffed at his hand, then made a soft chirping sound. Raxter made a sound like laughter. Moth has chosen you as well. She will be a great hunter someday. Smart, like you. Tamin smiled and carefully patted the cub's head. Moth chirped again and rubbed against his leg before running back to play with the others. That night, Tamin didn't sleep in his camp. Raxter invited him to sleep near the cave entrance, where the pack could watch over him. It was the first time in months Tamin had felt truly safe as he drifted off to sleep. He heard Raxter's voice through the translator. Thank you, Uncle Death. You saved my pack. You're welcome, Tamin whispered back. Outside, the alien stars shone down on a human and a pack of predators. An impossible friendship born from survival, grown from respect, and sealed with a title that would change both their lives forever. The ship appeared in the sky 3 weeks after Tamin had crashed. It was small and fast, a research vessel. Tamin recognized it immediately. His sister's team used ships like that. Raxter, Tamin called out. We have visitors. Probably looking for me. The Velrathi leader moved to his side, all 8 limbs ready for action. The cubs, Moth, Kree, and Shen scrambled into defensive positions. They had grown comfortable around Tamin, but strangers were still a threat. Are they hunters? Raxter asked through the translator. No, Tamin assured him. Scientists, researchers, they study other species. One of them is my sister. The ship landed near Tamin's broken vessel. The hatch opened and a woman stepped out, followed by 2 others carrying scanning equipment. The woman saw Tamin and her eyes went wide. Tamin! Aaron shouted, running toward him. Then she stopped suddenly, seeing the massive creature beside him. Oh no, Tamin, get away from that thing. It's a Velrathi. I know, Tamin said calmly. Irin, meet Raxter. He's the pack leader. Raxter, this is my sister. Irin stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Pack leader? Tamin, what are you talking about? Those things are apex predators. They don't have packs with humans. Raxter made a clicking sound. Your brother is Kreshmora. Uncle Death. He is pack. The translator on Tamin's collar broadcast the words clearly. Irin's mouth fell open. Her 2 colleagues behind her looked equally shocked. That's impossible, one of them whispered. No outsider has ever been accepted into Velrathi culture. It's never happened. Well, Tamin said with a small smile, it happened. Over the next few hours, Tamin explained everything. How he'd survived the hunt, how he'd helped Raxter feed his pack, how they'd learned to communicate. Irin listened to it all with a mixture of amazement and scientific fascination. This is incredible, she said. Do you know what this means? You've made first contact with the Velrathi on a cultural level. My team has been studying them from a distance for years, but we've never been able to get close. She turned to Raxter. May I meet your pack? I promise we mean no harm. Raxter considered her request carefully. You are Taemin's blood family? Yes, his sister. Then you may meet them. But slowly. Cubs are protective. Hyrin and her team approached the cave with extreme caution. The cubs emerged, hissing and showing their teeth. But when Taemin called to them, they calmed down. Moth even approached Hyrin, sniffing at her with curiosity. Hello there, Hyrin said softly. You're beautiful. Moth chirped and rubbed against her leg, just like she'd done with Taemin weeks ago. Kree and Shen remained more suspicious, but they didn't attack. They like you, Taemin observed. They trust you, Hyrin corrected. So they're willing to trust me. The moment was interrupted by a sound that made Raxthor's whole body go rigid. A howling cry from somewhere beyond the canyon. It was answered by more howls, all coming from the same direction. What is that? Hyrin asked. Trouble, Raxthor growled. The Screamers. Rival pack. Taemin grabbed his plasma cutter. How many? Many, too many. Raxthor's voice was tense. They've been circling our territory for days. Now they come closer. Hyrin pulled out her scanner and checked the readings. I'm detecting at least 15 Velrethi signatures, and... Wait, I'm also picking up human energy signatures. Weapons. Military grade. Taemin and Raxthor exchanged looks. Mercenaries, Taemin said. Someone hired humans to help them. But why? Hyrin asked. Why would one Velrethi pack hire humans to fight another pack? Raxthor made a bitter sound. Because we are contaminated. We work with humans. We use tools. We think like you think? The old packs believe this makes us weak. Wrong. They want to destroy us before our ways spread to other packs. That's insane, one of Hyrin's colleagues said. That's politics. Taemin corrected. Even among predators. Over the next 2 days, the situation grew worse. The Screamers set up positions in the hills surrounding Raxthor's territory. They didn't attack directly. They waited, cutting off hunting routes and water sources. It was a siege. Raxthor gathered the adult members of his pack. There were only 5, including himself. Against 15 Screamers and human mercenaries, their chances were poor. We must fight, Raxthor told his pack. We defend our home, our cubs, our way of life. The other adults clicked their agreement. They were ready to die if necessary. Tae-Min stepped forward. You can't win a straight fight. Not against those numbers. But you can win if you fight smart. He pulled out his mapping device and projected a hologram of the terrain. The Screamers are expecting a traditional battle. Velrethi against Velrethi. They're not expecting tactics, strategy, traps. Hyrin caught on immediately. We can help. My ship has weapons. Not strong enough to win a battle, but enough to create distractions. I can set up ambush points, Taemin added. Use the terrain against them. Make them fight on our terms, not theirs. Raxthor studied the hologram carefully. His mind, once focused only on direct hunting, now saw possibilities. Choke points. False trails. Ambush positions. This could work, he said slowly. But it will require all the adults. Every hunter we have. Taemin understood what he wasn't saying. The cubs will be alone. No, Raxthor said, turning to face Taemin directly. They will be with you. Silence fell over the group. Even Hyrin seemed shocked. You want me to guard your cubs? Taemin asked. During a battle? I want Uncle Death to protect the future of my pack, Raxthor said firmly. No Velrethi has ever left their cubs with an outsider. But you are not an outsider. You are Kresh Mora. You are pack. It was the ultimate gesture of trust. Cubs were everything to the Velrethi. Their future. Their legacy. To leave them in another's care was unthinkable. I'll do it, Taemin said without hesitation. I'll protect them with my life. Raxter placed one large limb on Taemin's shoulder. I know you will. That is why they will survive, even if we do not. That night, the pack prepared for war. Taemin helped set up traps and defensive positions. Irene programmed her ship's weapons for maximum distraction value. The adult Velrathi sharpened their claws and prepared their minds for battle. The cubs sensed something was wrong. They stayed close to Taemin, chirping nervously. Moth kept looking at Raxter, then back at Taemin, understanding that her father was going somewhere dangerous. Before dawn, Raxter and the other adults departed. They moved silently into the darkness, heading toward the enemy positions. The plan was to strike fast, hit hard, and withdraw before the enemy could respond. Classic guerrilla tactics, adapted for apex predators. Tae-min watched them go, then turned to face 3 frightened cubs and his worried sister. Now we wait, he said, in the distance. The first sounds of battle began to echo through the canyon. The first day passed slowly. Taemin could hear fighting in the distance, explosions and the screaming cries of Velrathi in combat. The cubs paced nervously in the cave, their ears tracking every sound. Irene stayed with Taemin, her scanner constantly monitoring the battle. The plan is working, she reported. Raxter's pack is hitting and withdrawing. The screamers are confused. They keep chasing into empty ambush zones. Good, Taemin said. But he couldn't relax. Something felt wrong. Moth approached him and made a soft whining sound. She pressed her small head against his leg, seeking comfort. Taemin petted her gently. It's okay, he told her. Your father is smart. He'll come back. Kree, the largest of the cubs, was less worried. He kept trying to leave the cave, wanting to join the fight. Taemin had to block him several times. No, Taemin said firmly. You stay here. Your job is to protect Shen and Moth, not run off and get killed. Kree growled but obeyed. Velrathi cubs understood hierarchy. Uncle Death had given an order. On the second day, the fighting moved farther away. Irene's scanner showed the battle shifting to the northern hills. Raxter was leading the enemy away from the den, away from the cubs. He's drawing them off, Irene said with admiration. He's protecting this location. But that meant the den was isolated. Exposed. Tae-min was checking the perimeter when Irene's scanner suddenly went wild. We've got movement, she said urgently. 3 Velrathi signatures. Coming from the east. They're not with the main force. Scouts. Taemin realized immediately. They're looking for the den. Looking for the cubs. He grabbed his weapons and started setting up defensive positions. Irene, get the cubs to the back of the cave. Now, what are you going to do? What I'm good at, surviving. Irene herded the protesting cubs deeper into the cave while Taemin prepared. He had his plasma cutter, some explosive charges from the mining colony, and a lot of cable. Not much against 3 adult Velrathi, but it would have to do. The scouts arrived an hour later. They were bigger than Raxter, covered in scars from many battles. They moved carefully, sniffing the air and checking for threats. Taemin watched from a hidden position behind some rocks. The first scout entered the cave entrance. Taemin triggered the cable trap. It snapped tight around the creature's front limbs, yanking it forward. Before it could recover, Taemin threw an explosive charge. The blast wasn't enough to kill, but it sent the scout tumbling backward. Dazed and bleeding, the other 2 scouts roared and charged. Taemin didn't try to fight them directly. He ran deeper into the cave system, leading them away from where the cubs were hiding. The scouts followed, hungry for revenge. Tae-min used the narrow passages to his advantage. The scouts were large and couldn't move as quickly in tight spaces. He set off more charges, collapsing parts of the tunnel behind him. He used his plasma cutter, to blind them with bright flashes in the darkness. But there were two of them and only one of him. They were coordinating, cutting off his escape routes. Taemin realized he was being herded into a dead end. He reached a large chamber and knew he was trapped. The two scouts entered from opposite sides, blocking both exits. They made clicking sounds to each other, pleased with their catch. Then Kree burst from a hidden side passage and slammed into one of the scouts. "No!" Taemin shouted, but it was too late. The cub had followed him, disobeying orders. Now he was fighting an adult Velrathi, and he was losing. The scout threw Kree against the wall. The cub yelped in pain but got back up, placing himself between Taemin and the enemy. The cub was protecting Uncle Death. Something changed in Taemin then. These weren't just animals he was guarding. They were family, his pack, and he would not let them die. He charged the scout that had hurt Kree, plasma cutter blazing. He aimed for the eyes, the soft joints between scales. He fought with a fury born of protection and love. The scout screamed as the plasma burned through its armor. Kree, seeing Taemin's tactics, caught at them. The cub went for the scout's legs, biting and tearing at vulnerable spots. Together, human and cub fought as a team. The second scout tried to help its companion, but Taemin triggered his last explosive charge. The blast brought down part of the ceiling, separating the scouts. Now it was one-on-one. The fight was brutal. Taemin took hits that broke ribs and tore skin. But he kept moving, kept attacking, kept protecting the cub beside him. Kree fought with surprising skill, using Taemin's tactics of targeting weak points instead of relying on strength. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the scout collapsed. Taemin had burned through its eyes and disabled 3 of its limbs. It wasn't dead, but it couldn't fight anymore. The second scout, trapped on the other side of the rubble, made a decision. It fled. The sounds of its retreat echoed through the tunnels. Taemin slumped against the wall, breathing hard. Blood ran down his side from a deep gash. Kree limped over to him, also wounded but alive. The cub pressed against him, making soft, worried sounds. "We did it," Taemin whispered. "We protected the pack." Hyrin found them an hour later. She had brought Moth and Shen with her, and they rushed to Kree, checking him for injuries. Hyrin immediately started treating Taemin's wounds. "That was insane," she said, hands shaking as she worked. "You could have died." "But I didn't," Taemin replied. And neither did they. The first scout, the one caught in the cable trap, had fled while they were fighting. So 2 scouts had escaped, wounded and defeated. One remained, disabled and alive. Tae-Min made a decision that surprised even himself. He treated the defeated scout's wounds. Not completely, but enough to stop it from dying. Then he dragged it outside the cave and left it where it could be found. "Why?" Hyrin asked. "Message," Taemin said simply. "Let the screamers know what happens when they threaten this pack's cubs." That night, Taemin could barely move. His injuries were serious. Hyrin had done what she could, but he needed real medical treatment. The cubs stayed close to him, especially Kree. The young Velrathi had learned what it meant to fight as part of a team, to think instead of just attacking. Moth climbed onto Taemin's lap despite Hyrin's protests. The cub curled up carefully, avoiding his injuries, and made soft purring sounds. Shen and Kree lay on either side, forming a protective circle. "They know what you did," Hyrin said quietly. "They know you bled for them." Taemin smiled despite the pain. "That's what family does." 3 days later, the sounds of battle finally stopped. Taemin waited tensely, wondering who had won. The cub sensed his worry and pressed closer. Then, through the morning mist, figures appeared. Raxthar and 3 other adult Velrathi, all wounded but alive. They had won. Raxthar saw the injured scout outside the cave. He saw the blood. He saw Taemin's wounds, and he understood everything. The pack leader approached slowly and lowered his massive head to Taemin's level. Uncle Death protected the cubs, Raxter said. Uncle Death bled for the pack. Uncle Death is true family. Kree made excited clicking sounds, telling his father about the battle. How Uncle Death had fought. How they had fought together using human tactics. Raxter listened, then made a sound like proud laughter. My son learns from the best teacher. As the pack reunited, wounded but victorious, Taemin felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt like he belonged. 3 weeks passed before Taemin could walk without pain. Hyrin's medical equipment had helped, but some injuries just needed time. The cubs visited him every day during his recovery, bringing him food and staying close. Kree especially seemed to feel responsible for his wounds. "Stop blaming yourself," Taemin told the young Velrathi. "You saved my life. We saved each other." The battle with the Screamers had ended in a strange way. The rival pack hadn't been destroyed, but they'd been defeated badly enough to retreat. More importantly, the human mercenaries had abandoned them once they realized they were fighting against another human. Mercenaries had codes. Fighting humans for aliens was acceptable. Fighting humans protecting aliens was different. Word of the battle spread quickly. Other Velrathi packs heard about Raxthor's victory. They heard about the human called Uncle Death who had fought beside the pack, who had bled for Velrathi cubs. Some were curious. Others were angry. On the 4th week, visitors arrived. 2 Velrathi from different packs, along with a representative from the Galactic Council. The council representative was a thin, gray-skinned alien named Vex, who spoke in formal, precise sentences. "We have received reports of unprecedented human Velrathi cooperation," Vex said, standing in the canyon with recording devices hovering around him. "This goes against all known behavior patterns of both species." "Things change," Taemin said simply. "Indeed." Vex turned to Raxter. "You granted pack status to a human. You gave him the title of Kresh Mora. This is historically significant." "It is practical," Raxter corrected. "Uncle Death made my pack stronger. Taught us new ways to hunt. New ways to think. Why would I reject strength because it comes from a different species?" The 2 visiting Velrathi clicked their agreement. They had come to learn, not to judge. Their own packs were struggling with territory loss and food scarcity. If Raxthor's methods worked, they wanted to understand them. Over the next few days, Taemin and Raxter taught the visitors. They showed them trap-making, tactical positioning, resource management. The visitors learned quickly, their predator minds adapting human concepts to Velrathi instincts. Hyrin documented everything. Her scientific mind was overwhelmed with possibilities. "This is the first real cultural exchange between species," she told Taemin one evening. "Not just trade or treaties. Actual sharing of knowledge and methods. Do you understand how rare this is?" "I just helped some friends," Taemin said. "I didn't plan to make history. The best history is never planned." Hyrin replied with a smile. The Galactic Council wanted Taemin to become an official liaison. They offered him a position with a fancy title, good pay, and all the bureaucracy that came with government work. Taemin declined. "I'm not a diplomat," he told Vex. "I'm a cargo hauler who got lucky and made some friends." "You underestimate yourself," Vex said. "Maybe, but I know what I want. And it's not a desk job." Instead, Taemin stayed with the pack. He repaired his ship, but he didn't leave. He built a small shelter near the cave and made it his home. He taught the cubs every day, showing them how to solve problems with thinking instead of just instinct. The cubs grew rapidly. Moth became the fastest hunter in the pack, using speed and tactics instead of pure strength. Shen developed an interest in building things, using tools to create shelters and traps. and Kree became the best fighter, combining Velrati ferocity with human strategy. 6 months after the battle, something remarkable happened. The Cubs invited Taemin to meet with the younger Velrathi from other packs. Word had spread about Uncle Death's teachings, and the youth wanted to learn. Tae-Min found himself standing in front of 20 young Velrathi, all watching him with curious eyes. It was terrifying and exciting at the same time. "Uncle Death will teach you," Kree announced proudly, using the translator Taemin had given him. "He will show you how to hunt with thinking, not just teeth." Taemin started with basic concepts. How to read terrain. How to predict prey movement. How to work as a coordinated team instead of just a pack. The young Velrathi listened intently, their sharp minds absorbing everything. Moth translated when Taemin's words were too complex. She had learned human speech better than any other Velrathi, spending hours listening to Taemin and Hyrin talk. Now she used that knowledge to bridge the gap between species. "Uncle Death says thinking is a weapon," Moth explained to the class. "Like claws, but sharper. It cuts through problems that teeth cannot solve." The lessons continued for weeks. More young Velrathi came to learn. Some adults too, though they were more skeptical. But results spoke louder than tradition. The packs that used Taemin's methods caught more food. They avoided conflicts they couldn't win. They survived better. Hyrin established a permanent research station nearby. Other human scientists joined her, studying this unique cultural exchange. But they kept their distance, observing without interfering. This was Taemin's world now, not theirs. One evening, Taemin sat with Raxter, watching the sunset over the canyon. The Cubs were practicing hunting techniques on each other, playfully testing what they'd learned. "I never thanked you properly," Raxter said quietly. "For what?" "For not running. That first day, when I hunted you. Most species run. You didn't. You fought smart. Made me respect you before I even knew you." Taemin smiled. "I was terrified. But running felt wrong. Felt like giving up." "Humans don't give up easily," Raxter observed. "This is your greatest strength. Not technology. Not weapons. Stubbornness. We prefer to call it determination. Call it what you want. It saved my pack. Changed my world." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Raxter asked, "Will you stay?" "The council will ask again. They always do." "I'll stay," Taemin confirmed. "This is home now. Your family. The Cubs are family. Why would I leave family?" Raxter made the purring sound that meant contentment. "Good. The Cubs need their Uncle Death. I need my pack friend." More months passed. The lessons continued. The cultural exchange grew. Human and Velrathi began to see each other differently. Not as prey and predator. Not as weak and strong. But as different kinds of hunters, each with their own strengths. Young Velrathi started calling Taemin by his title wherever he went. Uncle Death became a term of respect and affection. Some humans found it disturbing. Taemin found it perfect. On the anniversary of the battle, the pack held a ceremony. It was a Velrathi tradition to honor those who had proven themselves in combat. Taemin was given a place of honor, standing beside Raxter as an equal. Kree stepped forward to speak. Now nearly adult-sized and confident. "Uncle Death taught me that strength comes in many forms," Kree said to the assembled pack. "He taught me to think before attacking, to plan before hunting, to protect before seeking glory. He bled for us when he had no reason to. He stayed with us when he could have left. He is pack. He is family. He is Uncle Death, and we are proud to hunt beside him." The pack roared their agreement, a sound that echoed through the canyons. Later, as the celebration continued, Moth approached Taemin. She was graceful now, fully grown and beautiful in the way predators are beautiful. "I'm going to teach," she announced. Other packs, other cubs. They need to learn what you taught us. You'll be a great teacher, Taemin said warmly. I learned from the best, Moth replied. From Uncle Death himself. Taemin watched as the cubs he protected, now adults themselves, spread out to teach others. They carried his lessons with them, adapting them, improving them, making them part of Velrethi culture. He thought about his old life. Hauling cargo. Being alone. Moving from place to place with no real home. That life seemed distant now. Unreal. This was real. A pack that accepted him. Cubs that called him family. A purpose that mattered. Hiren joined him, holding a datapad. The council published their report. They're calling this the most successful cultural integration in galactic history. They want to model other programs after what you did here. I didn't do anything special, Taemin said. That's what makes it special, Hiren replied. You just treated them like people. Like equals. You respected their culture while sharing yours. That's all it took, Raxter approached with Shen. We hunt at dawn, the pack leader said. New technique Shen wants to try. You will join us, Uncle Death? Always, Taemin answered as the stars came out above the canyon. Taemin stood surrounded by his pack. Human and Velrethi together, not in spite of their differences, but because of them. Each making the other stronger. He was Uncle Death, pack friend, teacher, protector. He was home.